Uh, I want you to know that this morning I was at a licensing board meeting and there was an AI transcription service turned on.
Oh, good.
And the town administrator was running that meeting. I don't know what that means in terms of policy, but this maybe you'll ask about it. But you might check with the administrators.
Okay. Yeah, when I did minutes for the meeting, I took the Zoom transcription, put it into Chat GPT and converted it into minutes.
Right, there is an AI generative AI use policy for the town that will step. So I don't know how the town administrator's actions lined up with that policy. But if you're interested in pursuing that.
I'll reach out. Great, thank you. Welcome everyone to this.
Is that
Oh, yeah, if you want, I can, just ask Tiffany,
yeah,
what's permissible and let you know.
There's permissible and then there's useful. And these two things may also be different.
and
The positive.
and if there is a question about permissibility, you might ask how that was used at the licensing board meeting and what the
Yeah.
process was that made that.
Sure, yeah, Yeah.
Great,
happy to do that.
thank you.
Save that email.
Great. So welcome. Sure. September the 17th, I just put up by the date in the meeting notes. Meeting. First order of business is approval of meeting minutes from August 27th, 2025. Does anyone have any comments, thoughts, updates, feedback?
I have a question. One of the things in there is correct, was my question, about why there was a change in the greenhouse gas emissions and they're gonna get back to me. I haven't heard anything. I don't mind. I mean, I was in contact with the guy who did the inventory several months ago. I don't mind contacting him directly if that's okay, but I would like to get an answer.
Like that. Sorry, one more time, Alan. I just thought you were asking a question of minutes.
It was a topic, it was in the minutes where I had asked why the annual greenhouse gas emissions had changed. And what was the fellow's name from?
Oh, Saul Shepherd.
Yeah, he said they get back to us with an answer. I haven't heard an answer.
Oh, I'll follow up and I can,
Okay.
yeah, I can get you an answer then,
okay.
yeah.
The other thing, if you can be talking to him, he sent me their spreadsheet before, if you can send me a copy of their revised spreadsheet, it would be helpful.
With respect to the minutes, I provided some updates. So I don't know, did they make their way into it?
Kathleen, anything?
No, I mean,
Was motion that we approve the minutes? So moved. Read a second.
oh, yes. Okay,
All in favor, Kathleen?
yes,
Yes,
Bill? Yes. Yes. Great. So we'll open up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public here who would like to make a comment? Would you give your name, please? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Clint Richmond, town meeting member from precinct 6. I also serve as the conservation chair for the Massachusetts Sierra Club. Going to the statement here. That's what we're expecting. I'm here to highlight a new energy issue that has been raised in Brookline and at several other sites around the state, and that is using hydrogen fuel cells to generate electricity. The Verizon switching plant at 41 Marion Street is in the process of completing a 300 kilowatt electrical generator using fuel cells from a company called Bloom Energy, which is planned to be used only for supplemental power while the grid is on. The same company is installing similar systems at other Verizon locations and for industrial sites in Somerville and Avon, Mass, for example. What's troubling is that these Verizon plants obtain their hydrogen by converting natural gas to hydrogen and release of CO2 at approximately the same rate as it would be if it was a natural gas generator, minus the other emission because there's no combustion. This is known as gray hydrogen, and this is the least environmental source of hydrogen, which perpetuates and could conceivably expand the use of natural gas and its infrastructure. The Sierra Club, for example, opposes gray energy for this reason. Unlike renewable energy, these fuel cells operate at an extremely high temperature, over 1470 degrees Fahrenheit. This and other Verizon locations are already heat islands, and this could contribute depending on how many hours it operates. I should mention that 41 Marion Street is right in the heart of Coolidge Corner. Now, the system is also quite noisy, and Lexington, for its requiring mitigation for its Verizon location. I don't know if that same mitigation is being applied here or not. It's not really a ZAB issue really, but just as part of the overall impacts. It's also unclear whether this novel equipment will violate Brookline noise bylaw since it operates below the 80 dBA limit for a generator, if that's how it's classified. However, it may add more than 10 dBA to the background levels. Side note. And finally, the use of these fuel cells has not been mentioned in any of the news media that I can tell in any of these locations. So they're in Natick, Needham, Lexington, and now Brookline. Sorry, the one in Lexington is behind us. Our permits were approved last year. You can see that they've been going up on the side of the building up there on Marion Street. Photos of it, process if it wants to see those, shared some with some people, right? I just wanted to use this opportunity that ZAB is kind of the energy committee in town to at least have the issue go on public record. This didn't require any special permitting beyond a normal building permit. So it's like if you were putting in I don't know, a gas grill in your house, about the same level permitting review. And I know there's been some interest among members of the select board. It may be that there are, things we might do to address this, the review, this kind of project. I leave that to you all, but first wanted to at least get the issue on the table here.
Thank you for your thought. Appreciate it. Do you have any questions, Bill?
Lots, but I'm not sure which ones to pick up right now. It's all new to me. And thank you for bringing it.
I think there's the email exchange about this topic. Alexandra's done some work today, and a little bit more. And we will probably come back with some kind of update at some point.
Yes, I have been trying to pull together some information from, the building department reviewed the permit. And so it was, actually brought to my attention through a colleague in Lexington who was reaching out saying, we're going through this process. Do you have any, it sounds like you and Brookline have already gone through it. Do you have any guidance? So I actually reached out to our building department at that time, and then also Per Bruton, who's here with us this evening, our director of planning. And then we had some conversations with MAPC and with the building department staff. So I kind of gotten the information that I can from the internal folks. So the other information I would need to get from either Verizon themselves or the producers of the energy cells, Bloom Energy, I believe is the company. So I will pull together what I can and share an update back with ZAB. I think if ZAB's interested in pursuing it any further, then I would say that research and kind of follow up action fits with the body to determine what they'd like to do with it.
Yeah. And then I've looked into it very briefly. And very, very high level. So I'm probably wrong. So we'll just go there first. So I think most switching stations or hospitals or, a variety of places are going to need backup generators of some description. And as a general rule, if it's a facility that really needs to be up and running, battery systems are not considered enough. There's typically multiple redundancies. Your backup system, a backup battery system, and then something else. And that something else could be a generator, like diesel is historically being what was used. could be a fuel cell. So there's kind of a reality around that there's this kind of infrastructure that we need in place. I think what we need to understand is, what is this fuel cell? Is it running all the time? Is it running part of the time? Is it just a backup? Is its operation going to be once every 3 years or once every week? So I think there's stuff we need to understand more about, like its actual usage before we can. But these things will be around, whether it's diesel or hydrogen fuel cell, it will be around.
Just a quick question. I missed this. Is the hydrogen produced on site? In other words, it's a gas line going into this gizmo.
Oh, it is.
And the gizmo produces the hydrogen from.
Exactly, and that
the gas
advanced
turbine.
the carbon as carbon dioxide, because it doesn't need the carbon. Right, it's running on hydrogen.
Yeah,
So it's not really running on so that it.
Are we sure putting the hydrogen is produced inside?
Yeah.
So if
They have
they're,
the gas, that's part of the gas permit associated. with it.
so if they're producing it on site for natural gas on site, then and you're saying CO2 is a byproduct. So essentially natural gas is a fuel. This is not some byproduct of some natural gas plant or something like that. It's the natural gas that's going in here into this machine is used exclusively. That's really not the hydrogen.
It's really not hydrogen.
Well, but this technology allows you to determine what source of hydrogen you want to use.
So
So the
they-
fuel cell, and then there's the hydrogen. It could be a tank of hydrogen.
So they could put in a hydrogen. If it were permissible to have hydrogen
Right.
at that location, they could put in a hydrogen tank and get hydrogen.
Correct. That might require an additional permit, because now
No, no,
hydrogen's an
yeah,
explosion risk.
Yeah, I'm not talking about, I'm just talking about the technology. Okay.
interesting. Huh.
And the other thing is, because it's behind the meter, it's not subject to any kind of electrical generation regulations, just like like the diesel generator. But it's not small, it's 300 kilowatts.
But in that situation, if it was a diesel generator, at least 200 kilowatts as well, right?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Again, these are the kinds of questions we need to have answered. And I think it would be interesting to actually bring Verizon in. I think they're quite proud of this approach. They haven't really been subject to much public scrutiny.
They have published a presentation about a facility in New Jersey, I think, that is a hydrogen fuel cell system with battery backup that's much larger than this switching station. But they have published something about it. So yes, I do think they're
Yeah.
quite proud of it.
And Partners Health is also pursuing this. There's people have need for, reliable energy, whatever form. I first thought it was going to be primary, and I think it could. That's one of the other open questions. If they decided tomorrow to say, we're going to run the whole place on this, there's nothing stopping them, except maybe capacity. Maybe they could be more than 300 kilowatt, I don't know. But it's a kind of a modular system, so you can, I don't know what the increments are, but it's sort of like they're stacked.
Well, we will do some, I'm not sure if it's the top of our agenda, but we will have some more,
What was interesting, what was it? I found out about it through a colleague in Lexington of my own. And they said, oh, Verizon's saying it's going great in Brookline. And they called me up and said, well, how's it going in Brookline? I go, I've never heard of this technology. I didn't know about this site. I asked around, I contacted others up front, I contacted CAB, other people that said, no, I've never heard of this. I had no idea this is going up. You see this little modest construction going on, if you were observant on Mary, but you had no idea that it's an electrical generation plant. It's
Well, because there's
great.
that whole big project across the street too.
Right.
So it's
Yeah,
mixed in.
elder housing, I'm sure they'll love it.
So it's still being constructed.
It was supposed to go online in July of this year, so they're running a little behind, but it's in there. I would imagine. The construction part is pretty rapid. I mean, when I first raised the issue, they were just like piling their pads on the ground. Now there's metal walls around it. Looks like a giant showers. It's like a weird, it's opaque. You can't see it.
Okay, well, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to get this out in the public domain here.
That's great. Very useful.
Leave you here to your devices if you don't want.
Okay, next, unless there's someone else, public comment? Nope, great. Next update is this agenda is comprehensive plan presentation discussion. Rich, is going to be what? You're just going to give feedback on it?
Yeah, so just, there's a little bit of a change of procedure here. So, Kara Bruton was kind enough still to join us this evening, to our Director of Planning and Community Development. And so, we sent around the slides in advance of the meeting. So, I just asked Kara if she could be available to give you a very high level update on the comprehensive plan for those who aren't familiar. And then if Ziad has any specific questions, we can ask those now. And then the staff person on her team that is managing this process, his name's Jake, and he will be returning to Ziad in the winter time to get some specific feedback on things related to sustainability and the plan. But just, I said this before, but I'll just, bears repeating that Jake and I have been communicating back and forth, sharing both information gathered from the comprehensive planning process and the CARP process, as well as kind of iterations of our various plans and drafts as they move forward. So obviously the comprehensive plan is going to be much more high level than the climate action plan, but we'll certainly have some connection points and overlap. So with that, that probably wasn't the best intro to the comp plan, Kara, but I'll hand it over to you if you want to give a quick overview, and then folks can ask questions.
That's great. Thank you, Alexandra. So I'm Kara Bruton. For those who don't know me, I'm the Director of the Planning Department. And I wonder, just because I am here virtually and not in the room, and I wish I was, could we just go around the room and everybody tell me their first name? I can recognize voices and I can almost see you guys, but not quite.
Start with Kathleen.
Hi, Kara. It's Kathleen Scanlon.
Thought so.
Michael Rubenstein.
Nick Caramello.
Hi, Nick.
Alan Leviton.
Hi, Alan. Great. And are any committee members online, or everybody's in person?
No, everybody here is, three folks missing this evening, so our 4 are in person.
Great, thank you. That just helps me know who I'm talking to, which I appreciate. So thank you for inviting us to do a quick check-in about the comprehensive plan. To pause for just a second, in case people are wondering, what is a comprehensive plan? Why are we doing it? The comprehensive plans are done throughout the world, really, by communities, sometimes by states, sometimes by regions, to have a direction of what the physical environment of that community should be for the next 15 to 20 years. Right now, we're talking about this comprehensive plan providing the direction for the town of Brookline for the next 15 years. The framework that we're using for the whole creation of the comprehensive plan is the American Planning Association's Sustainable Places framework. And I can send you a downloaded version if you're interested in that, but it basically sets up this idea that instead of the way comprehensive plans were done like 20 years ago, where you would have a chapter on housing and then a separate chapter on open space and then a separate chapter on schools, that you would talk about all of these things intertwined, because they all do connect with each other, and using the lens of what is a sustainable place as the cross-cutting objective through all of that work. So we can get into that more if you'd like. I find it very grounding and helpful to get the community to talk about more than one issue at once, which I think is one of the most important things that this comp plan will do, that individual smaller studies or narrower in scope aren't already doing for the town of Brookline. Let's see, I'm looking at my notes here. So we have been hard at work. Kathleen is on the comp plan committee. There's been the steering committee has been very careful and methodical in making sure that any word that we put out to the community is well thought out and doesn't tip the scales in any direction one way or the other. But what we did do about a year ago is we had a first push out to the community, and that's in your slide deck. Got something like 10,000 different comments in different areas. It's kind of an open-ended ask, where do you see Brookline going? And then with that, the committee kind of narrowed down focus areas to ask more research questions, to dig in deeper with both staff, as well as industry practices, data from other communities. And we're probably about a month or two from being ready to push again back out to the community with specific questions. And most importantly, from my point of view, having a scenario that says, here's what will happen if we do nothing. So if we just stick our head in the sand and keep going the way that we're going, we will continue to see change. There's, projects that are in the development pipeline. The state will continue to give us carrots and sticks across a variety of different areas. Funding will continue to happen or not in different ways. But it gives people a sense of, Brookline's been changing since it first started, and it's going to continue to change no matter what we do or if we do nothing regards to the comp plan. And then it lays out different options. So, we could do nothing and say, okay, thank you very much. Or we could try to aim towards other scenarios, and that's in your packet as well. Where the steering committee is headed after looking at some of that work is they're taking a little bit of a step back because they don't want to necessarily have the name of a particular scenario sway somebody to follow that lead because they like the name neighborhood or they like the name sustainable. And instead kind of taking the questions, but allowing those to be asked and put out there to the community in a way that people don't have to worry about following one scenario or the other, because it's very likely that the output of the comprehensive plan will be a mix and match of those different scenarios that we could go along. I am going to share one slide, Alexandra, and please, if you can let me share slides.
1 second. Okay, you should be able to now.
Okay, thanks. So actually I just went by one. This slide 15, when we went out and asked people, again, that open-ended questions of what you'd like to see, these are the bullet points on the right are examples of what we heard from the community in that open-ended way. There is, as you can imagine, a lot of areas of agreement. Let's reduce reliance on fossil fuels. Let's improve bike lanes and safety and pedestrians. Let's expand our green spaces. The areas of debate that we started to hear were that a tension between dense housing near transit versus avoid overbuilding or how it's built, reducing car use versus accommodate residents who rely on cars. And again, this is what we are hearing from individual comments back to us. So that kind of gives you a sense of where it would be helpful for Jake and I to hear from you guys if there's any kind of balloon of an idea that maybe isn't being moved forward in the CART plan, some big crazy idea that you'd like to socialize a little bit broader with a broader community, or if there's something that maybe doesn't fit narrowly in the CART plan, but invites the community to try to discern between priorities that maybe are traditionally in the sustainability world, but also bridge into other topics. Basically, if there's a tough question that you would like us to bring out to the community when we go live again in another couple months, that's the kind of feedback that would be really helpful to get from you all. We will be coming back to all of the boards and commissions that have anything to do with land use once that big push happens, and then we'll be really asking you to roll up your sleeves and spend a lot of time with us figuring out the how. So, if one of the comprehensive plan goals are to have, or as a CART plan, if there's a specific objective in the CART plan that the community is also agreeing with at the same time, like getting a certain percentage of our housing stock to be fossil fuel free by X year, then I would be coming back to Alexandra and her team as well as you all to say, okay, now how do we do this? How do we prioritize it? And how do we put the specific measurable objectives and also recommendations in the comp plan so that it's a document that's available for everybody and doesn't just sit on the shelf. Let me see. This is the current path to 2035. This is the map that shows kind of if we do nothing, how the town will continue to change. So some people that enjoy thinking more about specific areas but maybe not specific projects, but kind of at that scale. This might be a map to kind of center your questions on of, why are we doing this? Is there anything that you wish we could tweak or change in the outcome of the town rather than what you see on this slide? I think I'm going to stop there. I will give you one other example of the kind of feedback I'm looking for just as a prompt. When I asked Commissioner Shute, look, I want to make this comprehensive plan as useful as possible to you and your team. Everybody's going to say they want better pedestrian network. That's fine. You guys are doing that. We know that there's a lot of funding choices that the whole town has to deal with. But what's one thing that we could do that you're not already seeing, happen fast enough? And the example that she gave me was purchasing open space, that it's something that the town has talked about for decades in multiple plans, but we don't have the engine yet put together. We don't have a pot, even an account set aside that could accept money if there was. We don't have the kind of narrowing down of what are our priorities for purchasing open space, what sizes do we want, which neighborhoods are the most important from an equity lens, from an overuse perspective. And then we can go from there and, put out proposals to get open space or to weave that into larger development projects, which are few and far between, or possibly add policy recommendations to any scale of change in our zoning and land use development. So just wanted to give you one more example of the kinds of, at this point, those kind of big picture questions that might be significantly different from where you think the town is going in the work that you do in this committee. That would be helpful to hear. Thank you.
I have a question, Carol.
Yes.
How would you like to get feedback?
Phone call, email, right now, all of the above. We are in the next probably 3 weeks refining the materials that will then go out for a big public push. So if it's something that, like a specific question that you would like us to ask the community, to give us a call or email us in the next 3 weeks, that would be great. Otherwise, again, we'll be coming to you all after that big push and be asking you how we should do this. And I'll put Alexandra has my information.
Okay. So we could reach out individually, and you want it in 3 weeks. Within 3 weeks is the short version.
Yes, it's more likely to get in the materials if it's in the next 3 weeks. We are not going to all of the boards and commissions like we are with you all here tonight. We just thought it would be good for us to check in since Alexandra made a presentation to the steering committee, and we've seen internal drafts and understand where the direction where the CARP is going. I understand the CARP, Alexandra, stop me if I'm being too optimistic, but the CARP is probably going to be finishing up in December, whereas the kind of big public push for the next phase of the comp plan will probably be December, January, and the comp plan will probably be wrapping up in March. So it seems like what we'll be doing is receiving information from the CARP and making sure that that's intertwined into the comprehensive plan, but there may be again other topics that are kind of outside the scope, or maybe a topic you just can't get to in the CARP.
I have a bunch of other questions, but does anyone else want to?
I've got a couple of questions also.
Go ahead.
Hey, Kara, this is Alan. First, I want to make sure I understand. If the CARP won't be formally published for quite a while, in March or something, whatever the date is. But I think there's a pretty good sense, correct me if I'm wrong, Alexander, but I think of what some of the major things are that are going to end up being in the CARP. So if they're obviously going to be in the CARP, will that be considered, or are you asking us for our separate opinions about things that are in the CARP that we think are particularly important for the comprehensive plan?
So let me start with the second question. The particular things in the CARP plan, I think you all will probably work out the priorities of the I imagine the priorities of those recommendations in the CARP plan. And also when we do that, after we do the big next push with the public, we will then be coming back to you all with like, here's what we heard from the community of what the community said, you know, which of these things would you prioritize, for example? Your first question, Alan, can you just say it one more time? I've lost.
But yeah, I guess really what I'm wondering here is, if there's something that's in the CARP plan, okay? Well, let me get to the specific one that I'm thinking of. One of the big items in the CARP plan is the BRDO, which is, are you familiar with what that is?
Yeah.
Is that, when I was looking at the comprehensive plan, I guess what I was wondering, is that the type of thing that would be in there? Because that's, to a great extent, actions to be taken by individual property owners on their properties. And I was reading into the comprehensive plan that these are things like zoning laws and things like that about new construction. So without, you know, I'm not asking for an opinion on is BRDO good or bad, but is something like BRDO, would it fit into a comprehensive plan?
Yes, it definitely could. And I think kind of the strategy behind that is somewhat up to you all. So for example, if you all know that you want to move forward with a BRDO one way or the other, then your audience is really the town meeting members, right? And so there may be an advantage or there may be a disadvantage of focusing on that in the comprehensive plan. If we ask the entire community, what do you think about BRDO? That might take, you know, a lot of education in an open house style meeting or in a, you know, 6-week period to get an informed answer. And it may be helpful if everybody says, yes, we think this is the best idea ever. But you may get a lot of shoulder shrugs because people won't be able to understand it that quickly. So it might be better to kind of spend that time, you know, think about your neighbor that you meet in the grocery store, you know, like what's the 5-minute, you know, question that you'd like to get their input on. And I would say genuinely want to get their input on. Like if you all are, you know, moving in a direction where you've done enough research, you know that that's where you want to head, then you probably don't genuinely want feedback from the general populace. You might want to refine the policy with, you know, the select board and town meeting members and different user groups and that kind of thing. But you may not want to ask that question to the general public because it you may not want 1,000 answers about that.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
Anyone else? Bill?
Yeah, I got a little confused about the timelines. Because my understanding is at this point, the CARP is not done until spring of 26.
Okay.
So it sounds like you'll be outpacing the CARP. And just touching back on what Alan was saying, that there may be some interaction between the two that we have to make sure gets reflected.
Yeah, and you know, all I can tell you is that Alexandra and I think speak at least 2 or 3 times a week on a variety of topics. And I know that you know, again, we're trading information already and we'll keep doing that. I think if there's anything in particular that you're worried will be against or counter to what you all are working on that might come up kind of naturally with the general public and the comp plan, that would be helpful to hear. But otherwise, you know, we are communicating with each other and I don't see any big concerns where the two are moving in opposing directions.
Sure.
Alexandra.
Oh, sorry. No, okay.
Could you comment on that? Just if you feel comfortable with all the CARP stuff getting across to Carl.
Yeah, so the timeline so Kara was referencing December for the climate action plan, which is when we will start to have a closer draft available of the climate action plan. But Bill is correct, the final votes by ZAB and the select board are going to take place in late winter, early spring, March, April, 2026. But to Kara's point, I did attend the recent comprehensive plan steering committee and did give them a progress update on high level. Here are the goals, focus areas of the climate action plan, and then have been and will continue to share iterations of the draft with Jake, who's the staff person working on this, and Kara is one of the members of the CARP steering committee from staff. So lots of touch points there on the iterations of the content as it's developed.
And then somewhat new-ish point, but picking back up on part of what Alan was talking about, in terms of potential regulatory changes. And one that came to mind, and I'm wondering whether it's been considered and at what point in the process it would be considered, is something like eliminating parking minimums, right? So there's a regulatory change, big step, fitting to consider as part of a comprehensive view of the future. And I see it being climate related in the sense of supporting higher density housing, all that. And it's one of several examples that could fit into that category, but I'm just wondering, where is something like that picked up on, discussed, either discarded or included?
Yeah, that's a great question and a great example. So parking, I'm sure you will be surprised to hear that parking came up when we asked the community kind of generally, where do you see Brookline? You know, what's your vision for Brookline in the future? Parking came up, both we want more parking, we want less parking. And so that's the kind of thing is of course very complicated in the policy, but that idea of eliminating a parking minimum is simple enough that even the early drafts of our public, facing questions includes that very question. And that's the kind of thing that would be that we want to get from a wide range of the community, but we're hoping to get some actual direction on that so that can support the direction that the town wants to head, because the actual policy writing for that is quite simple. It's more just the will of the town meeting members, of course, that would change those rules, but this is an opportunity where the broader community will be saying and boiling down into a document where they want to see the town headed, and town meeting members do listen to that.
Maintaining the very important distinction, like I'm sure you included in what you just said, it's not eliminating parking, it's eliminating minimums.
Right.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I had a question and then a comment. When you're doing a survey for the comprehensive plan, are you gathering any demographic information like age of the respondents?
We are, yep. And what we did with the first push, knowing that, even though we network with different affinity groups, we paid for ambassadors that we knew would be underrepresented to do kind of smaller workshops in their communities in the ways that they wanted to do them. That's how, so we go beyond just the survey and the open house, kind of format, because we know, especially with the open house format, the physical, who's there are the same 100 or 200 people that, we know most of them, we staff know most of them, at least by first name. The survey, we were able to get to a broader community, but it's still skewed very white, very home ownership, and 60 plus, which is not a surprise. And that's why, again, we did the kind of separate, deeper dive in focusing into communities in affinity networks that are other demographics in that. And we will do the same thing with this push as well.
So the reason I asked the question is the comprehensive plan is 15-year window. The CARP is a 5-year window. We're heading towards a 2040 goal for ZIAB, 2050 goal for net zero for the state. The timelines are like a vision for a town that's only 15 years long is very short. Like realistically, when you build a building, it's going to be around for 100 years. We're in a situation where we're making plans driven by largely older people who aren't going to be around forever, right? And making decisions based upon their input. And and I'm also including myself in that category. Although I haven't got in the hall. No, but we are. That's what we're doing. And so when we're looking at these things, I think having a longer window, like having a language around it that says we're planning for 15 years, but we really need to be looking at 100 years is really important, because you can't make decisions. Every building, if a building is older than 50 years old and Brookline is considered historic, In 100 years, every building built today will be considered historic. So we're dealing with this kind of like temporal problem that I think is really accentuated in these longer term plans. And so outreach to younger population, including school kids, frankly, like anyone who's going to be around for a longer period of time, who's really got a vested interest in the future of this town in 15, 20, 30 years. I think that's really important. And that's kind of my only sort of general piece of feedback for this. I love that it's based upon a Massachusetts standard. I cannot tell you how happy that makes me.
Oh, it's not, it's on purpose, not the Massachusetts standard. It's the National American Planning Association. One of their standards, or one of their published booklets, is a sustaining places idea. That unfortunately the Massachusetts standard is still, list a series of topics that are the traditional ones from 20, 30 years ago, that must be included. And so of course we'll make sure that each of those elements are included. Of course, we're going to talk about housing and we're going to talk about transportation, but we're not organizing the discussion or the questions, around those discreetly.
Then let me rephrase that, Cara. I'm delighted that it's based upon a standard.
Good, good. And I was smiling when you said longer period of time, because I'm remembering a particular conversation in graduate school with a professor. And what's different about Massachusetts, even from communities that you would consider probably less progressive, I won't name them right now, but Massachusetts does not require communities to do a comp plan at all. So in some places like California, or even many places in the Southeast, they require communities, whether it's at the state or usually county level, to make sure that their funding priorities map back to a comp plan. There is no requirement, Massachusetts is very, the towns do what the towns want to do. And so there is no requirement to map any policy or funding choices back to a comp plan. But I think if that was in place, it would make more sense to look at least a longer horizon, like 20 or 30 years. But because the political framework that we're in is town meeting, but even if it was city council, in Massachusetts, that's turning over every 5 to 10 years, that the power kind of structure. And so anyways, it may make sense to flag things that the comp plan is, recommending should have a longer time horizon, like you were saying, as a goal for sure.
I don't have anything else.
Thank you so much, Kara. I appreciate you taking the time to join.
Thank you very much, and have a good night.
Thank you too.
Bye.
Okay, chair update. I'm just going to give some updates of some stuff that I'm sort of thinking about working on, and we can, but we're not really going to discuss them tonight, but they're going to be coming up in future meetings. I met with Michael and Alexandra about just generally, how we should be thinking about ZIAB, and some of the stuff we came up with is language around how we think of ourselves. And some of the stuff that is, we're an advisory board primarily, which is a sort of responsive aspect. But we can also play an advocacy role, which we talked about. And so I want us to start thinking about, I'm going to try and come up with some language and something for this future discussion is around that, is looking at the question of like advisory versus advocacy and how we tier that into all of our work. And the second thing I'm working on right now is I put together one of my, as now familiar, dumps of data around what it means to be net zero, specifically with a specific focus on offsets. And because obviously you can be net zero by getting rid of all greenhouse gases and getting rid of all polluting cars, but you can also be net zero by going down an offset path. And I think that's a discussion we need to start having about what that means and what that looks like in the broader context of all the work that we're doing. And so that's kind of my update. Those are the two things that I'm looking at right now. Okay. That's it.
Is the first thing along the lines of a job description or mission statement or whatever you want to phrase it for this group? Is that
I think we wear multiple hats, and I think sometimes it's difficult to know which hat we're wearing. And I think so. If you look at the history of Ziad was trying to operate without town staff.
Yeah.
We have town staff now. We have a very competent division, and we need to be responsive and in an advisory capacity to the town staff and to town residents. And so that's wearing one hat, right? And that's a certain way that we want to behave in that situation where we're sort of, we're not taking the lead, but we're responding, or, there's another aspect of this where we might be more playing an advocacy role. It's a different hat. And we need to understand when and where we're meant to be playing which role, so that we don't step on Alexandra's toes and her team's toes. And so just, we know what we're doing.
Sure. Yeah, it'd be interesting to picture, because the description on the website right now is inadequate, right? It's just this weird thing. So to have a way in which we would come together on some wording that reflects exactly what you're talking about in writing, then it could be right there. That way we understand what we've agreed to. Potential new member would understand what it is that they're signing up for. Yeah, I think it's a good thing to do. Those kinds of discussions can be dreary about mission statements and so on, or they can be really energizing.
For most boards and commissions, that comes from the charge from the select board. So if what you're doing is you're recommending a revision to the charge.
We've just done that, and I think what I'm talking about is actually consistent with our current charge. I think it's just putting some structure around how we think about ourselves.
Okay.
But we should review.
Yes, the Ziad mission was just updated within the last year and was approved by the select board with that. So what it currently is a modified version of what it was before. That Paul worked a bit with.
You use the word mission, I assume you mean church.
Well, it's written as the
Mission
mission statement for Ziad.
It is both. So yes, confusing, but
So if charge means something different than mission statement, then we should consider that, because I think it is considered the mission statement. Yeah.
It may just be a matter of terminology,
Yeah.
but I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
So,
I'd like to retract my earlier use of the word inadequate. I was looking at the wrong part of the website, which was inadequate. But I see now that there's the whole history and then mission.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's my update. That's stuff I'm working on. And just to be specific, the reason I'm working with Alexandra's team first on the offset stuff is because I want to get staff input before we bring it to the board in general. Because we have these great resources, and hopefully we can have a more fulfilling discussion that way. Okay, what's next on the agenda? Unless anyone else has more on the update. Okay. So we have Ziad 2025 H2 work plan. We started discussing this last meeting. We ran out of time.
Do you want us to pull up the slides for the conversation, Nick?
Probably, yes. And we were on slide 5 when we ran out of time. That's the one. Kathleen, were you here last time?
Yeah.
You were. Okay. Were you online? Were you here in person? You.
Yeah, I might have,
Okay.
but I know I've seen the slide.
Okay, so the proposed plan for discussion, where we got to, so there was a couple of things that happened. One of the things was that Patty raised the question of whether this was going to violate open meeting law, and nothing about this intrinsically violates open meeting law. We had Michael started a discussion with town council about this, and I think everything in this page is fine with town meeting law as long as open meeting law, as long as we follow open meeting law correctly, which is to say, in this situation, if Warren and Alan go off and work and develop Birdo, and they are meeting together, they are basically affected their subcommittee, and anytime they meet together, there has to be a public meeting.
All right, so that's the position.
That is the position definitively. I'll also say that if Patty goes off and works on the Brookline grid and starts to involve other members of the public, that is also a subcommittee, and she will also have to comply with open meeting law. if any of us basically go off and do work, and then we're sort of collaborating with others on an ongoing basis on a topic, I believe that triggers open meeting law. So there's really no, and that's fine, right? It's very clear. And if in doubt, I think the safe answer is just assume it triggers open meeting law, right? That's probably the best way to look at it. If in doubt, just have a public meeting. I think one of the things that is implied here is that we might be having a lot more public meetings. And one of the things that I've discussed briefly with Alexandra and with Michael as well is how we would manage that. And we're sort of proposing that we would have maybe a lot more online meetings that did not have staff participation. So if Alan and Werner were working on something for Birdo and there's a public meeting, they might run that themselves, produce their own meeting notes. It would have to be a town Zoom. It couldn't be your personal Zoom, I believe.
Well, it has to be a Zoom that allows for public participation in it. So I
But we
think,
want it recording.
yes, and you need a recording.
So it's probably best just to use towns if we can.
Yeah.
And we've also discussed using an AI note taker to be able to facilitate the meeting notes. And that's one of the reasons that Michael brought up the question of AI, using AI to take notes.
So it sounds like the question of AI for notes is not.
It's unresolved.
Because just a comment is, if, let's say something where it's two people meeting, okay? And that's it. I understand the open meeting laws and all that. If it's two people meeting and you have to meet and discuss things and also be taking notes and produce minutes, it is really not, in my opinion, conducive to generating ideas and producing a work product. So AI produced minutes to me would be very important. Now, when I say AI produced minutes, it doesn't mean that you just have the chatbot or whatever produce them without you looking at them afterwards to say, yes, I think that characterizes the meeting. But I personally, I would find it pretty hard to be in a one-on-one meeting with somebody and have to be taking minutes.
There's two important things that you left out. One is notice, which is also part of open meetings.
Well, I understand it.
And number two is agenda. So when you post notice, you need to post an agenda. And so the agenda can be very broad. It can just say discussion of Birdo or acting recommendation on this topic. It doesn't have to be anything more than that for the thing.
The reason I didn't bring those up is I don't consider that to be an issue. I mean,
Right.
make minutes, but you make an agenda, you post things and so on. It's the minutes that.
But the resulting minutes, if you look at some of the select board minutes, sometimes they will say things like, there was a discussion of that.
It doesn't have to be completely comprehensive. In part, also could be able to record.
Okay, well, it sounds like you're working on the question of AI. I would say the other thing would be, if that's not allowed, at least some guidelines, maybe just some things like you just mentioned, so we have an idea of what is the definition of minutes.
What are the minimum minutes? Would probably be like, what's the minimum requirement?
Maybe we need a template.
Maybe.
Another comment for Tiffany around the select board handbook, that we need a template for simple.
You had a question.
Yeah, so I have my own paid account, which does do recordings and does generate AI meeting minutes. So, but would I be willing to publicly post that on the town calendar? I mean,
Yeah, so anything that's going on, any meeting that's posted, has to go on the town website and it goes through our Civic
Right.
Plus platform. So that all has to happen through our staff.
right,
So I guess this is probably a better question for Rebecca, who actually does the work to make that happen. Does it save you an inordinate amount of time if the Zoom link is not generated by you, or that helpful? Or does it really matter if you're going to be posting the agenda and to the calendar and notice anyway?
That
does not make much of a difference to me. It's not any easier. In
But
fact,
you-
it would probably be more difficult.
So do you have to be present to start the meeting and then give control to one of us running the meeting?
That I would have to do.
But you could set up whomever, Kathleen, as the host of the meeting so that she can open and start the meeting.
I can only do that for people who have an approved town account. And certain permissions, so even certain staff that don't have the right permissions. Can have that, and I think that would have to be a paid license through the town. I could be wrong.
Yeah, no, that
I
makes
think
sense.
you're right.
That makes sense. Yeah, so, so
So
I can also-
let's not solve this here.
Yeah, just an issue to.
Yeah. Yeah, I can
Come
have the
back.
question of like, could we use a non-town Zoom for the meetings? At the end of the day, I think the most important piece is that we have the minutes and the recording and that those are posted appropriately in compliance with all the town's rules.
And it'd be available to people, members of the public.
I will note, if we do get approval to use AI meetings, it works much better if you are fully online. That's just a note. You can choose to do whatever you want, but it works much better because it knows who is talking.
Hmm.
And therefore it can say, Bill said such and such, Kathleen said such and such, as opposed to someone said such and such, right? And so I think that's very, really helpful. So there are implications if we do end up doing a lot of work streams, and I don't know that we will, but if we do end up with a lot of work streams, there's obviously implications around coordination with Rebecca and making sure that we don't overwhelm her with either requests to set up meetings or super ad hoc, meeting notes coming in at the last moment, or sorry, agendas coming at the last moment. So we'll have to be very considerate around that. But I expect we can manage that. So that's kind of broadly speaking in the first two bullets of this slide. Is there anything else that anyone wants to talk about on the first two bullets here?
I would consider, in the process, with the goal of setting those things up easier, if you have standing meetings that are like posted out, like this subcommittee is gonna meet every week on Thursdays at 1 or whatever, then they at least get on the calendar. They can be created, and I think it's easier to change as long as you change them within the notice period, so that Rebecca can batch a bunch of that work. That would probably be quickly.
I think that makes a lot of sense. One other implication might be that if we're doing a lot of this work, we're doing a lot of public meetings around some of this stuff, that we may have fewer ZIAB meetings. We might go down to 1 a month. Right? So that might be fine. I don't know if that's going to happen in the short term, but in the longer term, that might be something that we end up doing. One other thing, again, Kathleen goes up and works on the resident working with the Bill's working on mobility issue, whatever. What I don't want us to have is an ad hoc every week people come forward with an update. That's not a useful way for us to have our ZIAB meetings. So what we really need to have is a plan that says Kathleen is going to present to ZIAB on December the 3rd, right? We can move a week or two here and there. Bill is going to come up with his stuff first. So we need to do a lot more planning around these different things because they won't all be funneled through the ZIAB bi-weekly meetings. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. And so that's really the third bullet. Each initiative will have a plan, an objective, and a timeline. So the idea here is that these plans, objectives, and timelines should be agreed upon by ZIAB. So if Kathleen goes up and says she's going to work on a residential solar initiative for the residential working group, we should discuss that. We should agree upon it. Some plan should come up. We should vote on that and move forward. And rinse, lather, repeat for every other initiative that we do. And a large part of that is to make sure that we're aligned with Alexandra's division.
Don't you ladder before meeting?
You do. It's interesting. I've heard rinse, lather, repeat said so many times,
Oh,
and I have never noted that. Anyway,
lather runs.
Lather rinse repeat. It's fabulous. Oh, that's so funny. Thank you.
You're so welcome. Nice.
Just-
What they pay me the big bucks
I have
for.
to rewind. I have
Well,
to.
some people rinse their dishes first with this environmentally bad practice.
This is environmental bad practice. Is correct.
You guys broke Rebecca. She knows.
So, I think, so what this means is and another part of this is, I got this list here, if you go on the next page, so. Initiatives and focus, so I've got down Patty Town Grid because there's something Patty's interested in working in, on Alan and Warren are working on Berto because it's something they've said they're interested in working in. I volunteered Vikram for municipal solar, municipal and residential solar, but maybe it's just municipal solar, and I volunteered Bill for residential EV adoption, although I think that's the right thing to do. Broadly speaking, it might be slightly different than that. So all of these things, once we have gone off and put a plan together, we've come back with a plan, it might turn out that this is too much for us to take on. And I think that's the other part of the planning process, is we have to go off and think about everything we want to do, and then come back and say, well, actually, we're not going to get this all done in Q4 2025. I need to be realistic about that, because we don't have enough time to do it.
Question,
Yes.
what is the role of the full ZF committee with respect to each of these initiatives?
You go off with Alan, you come up with a plan, although we're going to discuss the plan today, and a strategy, and you come to the committee, you come to ZF and you say, this is the plan and the strategy, we should discuss it and agree upon it. ZF agrees upon the plan and the strategy, you go off and execute the plan and the strategy.
Okay, but then in the course of executing the plan and strategy, we come up with ideas to X, Y, Z, and so on.
Then you'd have to say, Alexandra and Nick, we want to discuss these ideas on March 2nd. We need some time on the agenda. We need 30 minutes. We will put together a presentation.
Okay.
And of course, some of those executions of strategies will be like work with the staff to make sure that this information is incorporated into a staff works group. Whether that staff works room is the car, or whether it is, the EV charging processes, et cetera, et cetera.
And if I may, this one last question, if the only committee with two people is Werner and me, so I'll use our names. If either of us separately wants to meet and discuss things with somebody on town staff,
It's completely fine.
that's not open meeting law.
Right, no open law.
Okay.
And actually, if the two of you come up with a plan and strategy and you want to go off and work on those things independently, you go off and do your thing, whatever else, you do that and you just come together to kind of discuss. And that's when the open meeting law stuff is.
I can see a lot of that will happen.
A lot of it, and I think the better the plan, the better this will work with a structured open meeting or public meeting approach. The worse the plan, the worse it will work. Right?
Yeah.
So we don't really want to be doing a lot of like editing of documents in public meetings. That does not sound like a very good idea. Or do you say anyone's time?
So can I just ask, there's residential solar, residential EV adoption, and then we have this residential working group. So is it seems like,
These are placeholders. This is not right.
okay, I just wasn't sure if the residential working group is already established, is that the place that if there were other residential initiatives, if that's, would be part of that group, or if folks would be working separately on some of those types of initiatives, but maybe it's too early to ask that question.
I mean, it's not too early. I think it could be a great example of saying that Bill and Kathleen should be working together in a residential working group, and Bill should be focusing on EV adoption and Kathleen should be focusing on residential solar. I think we can leave that up to Bill and Kathleen to work out. And propose to ZF and then we'll work.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I recognize that, really appreciate your having put effort into this capture.
Yeah.
Kind of thinking about for us going forward. And I recognize this is not a legally refined document with
No.
every term carefully defined. At the same time, I'm getting pretty confused.
Okay.
And I guess, because we have initiatives, we have working groups, we have the board subcommittee has been band deed of avocation. So there's some definitional things that I'm still kind of like wondering about, particularly as they then apply to this open meeting law considerations. So I'm still very confused about the parameters on that.
Well, we wouldn't even be allowed to talk about EVs in residential without noticing a public meeting.
So your confusion is not, you are not alone.
I'm just one voicing it.
So let me propose a way, two things that might.
Okay, then I'll finish my.
So the first thing is, consider subcommittees and working groups equivalent for this process. And they are both things that like, are whichever term you use, consider it subject to open meeting law. That's number one. And number two, in terms of establishing what the working groups are, if this group is coming together collectively to like, resolve who's on, what are the working groups, who are the members of the working groups, if you make that a prerequisite to then the working groups going off and doing that thing, the working, then you will know, for example, like, are Bill and Kathleen is part of the same working group and then subject to building a plan together as a subcommittee, or are they doing separate things and then they're off on their own? But if the whole group collectively accepts the chair's proposal for what the groups are, what the initiatives are, then the process of actually executing those groups can be more straightforward. But you haven't reached that stage yet, so it's not like you can take this and then the two of you could go off together and think about this problem, because this is has to be ordered in that.
So, and I agree with all of that. And let me kind of just add to that and give an example that might help you both. Let's say you're working on EV adoption, and we don't yet know whether you're going to be working with Kathleen on the residential working group. The residential working group we know is like a community outreach kind of advocacy group that is intent of engaging with the community, and we've got a community outreach person. As you build the plan, there are 3 different roles that we can wear. The 3 different roles for this house. Role number 1 is staff do it. Right? So we say, okay, staff do it or is doing it, already has a plan. Staff number 2, role number 2 is we are advisory to staff on this, which again, it's something we would do with staff. And role number 3 is it's an outreach and advocacy thing. If everything in the residential EV adoption thing ends up being an outreach and advocacy thing, it logically fits within the residential working group. But until we put together that plan, I don't think we know the answer. So someone has to go off and do a little bit more, work out what it is that we want to do, work out the objectives. And once we have those objectives, we can say, where is it going to fit?
Yep.
So for sorry.
Yes.
So for instance, residential working group, we did that last March. We went through the objectives for that group. We have a plan to hire somebody. We're going to be working on mass save incentives and these electrified Brookline guides and getting that out to the public. So we've already kind of got our charge. We're just waiting for the new hire start.
Yeah.
And then we'll be ready to do something else after that, which gives you time to think about if that would be a useful group or not for any outreach.
But it wouldn't stop you, for example, going up and doing a plan, working with staff, understanding what the staff plan is, thinking of advocacy and outreach stuff, putting together something that the residential working group could take on, or doing it yourself if the residential working group was otherwise engaged.
And just to add another wrinkle to the things that you could look at, the select board's fiscal year 27 goals have now been approved for developing financial plans. So to the extent that any one of these work streams can flow into those plans, whether it's through the CARP or other goals. That's also an avenue for this board to discuss and move forward to this.
That was done at the last select board meeting, wasn't it?
Yes, last time.
Could we get a copy of whatever the final to be posted, right?
Yes.
It's posted with the meeting material, but I can
Oh,
send it around.
yeah.
Okay, so I was, there were just a few things that I was wanting to get through here. And I really forgot where my thoughts left off. So parameters around open meeting law. If you and I have a cup of coffee together someday this week,
That's fun.
that's fine. If you and I have a cup of coffee together to talk about my thoughts about transportation decarbonization,
If it's not, I think if we're just having a chat about something which is not being defined as something for ZIAP to move forward, we can just have a chat. By the time we formulated the plan and we've discussed it with ZIAP and we've agreed to do it, anything that goes on with that you go off and do with anyone else for any reason is subject to open meeting law.
Okay, so I'm thinking of these in terms of, and you know, you're familiar with agile methodology, you know, like sprints, right? I mean, these are kind of like sprints in a way.
I love the time. No one else understands it, but I love the time. Yes, I agree completely.
And I think if we start using sprints, nobody will understand it and we can get stuff done.
So the reason I want the plan is because I think if we do good planning, it will feel like a sprint. And we'll be able to comply with open meeting law and we'll be able to get stuff done.
That helps me.
I actually think Agile works really well with open meeting law.
Right. For those of people who don't understand what sprints are, do you want to kind of define it?
So, like I can, so, agile methodology basically says that you want to try and achieve something, but you can't do it all at once. You break it down into component parts and you do it in short bursts. And the sprint is normally 2 weeks, but it could be longer. And that's a really effective way of getting things done because instead of trying to get to the end goal all at once, you're just breaking it down. This works really well with meeting law because you can say, I'm going to do these things the next 2 weeks, and then I'm going to report back on it, right? And that just works really nicely. And when I report back on it, we can discuss it. So I think it ties into this.
And you and I having coffee would be a scrum.
Sure.
2-person scrum.
Yes.
So the other thing I just want to drop in here, I know the phrase residential EV adoption was going around, but you also said it's a placeholder. I'm really looking at transportation decarbonization. To me, that is kind of the scope, that thing I shared with you. That's kind of what I'm thinking. Residential EV adoption is certainly a part of that. But I believe it doesn't need to be me, but somewhere in this mix, that's the range we need to be thinking about. So I don't want to be overly narrow. I mean, the other things that are on here are, I think, fairly Roberto's pretty specific, but it's illustrative or entry point to a larger topic. But and therefore the tie into a residential working group, yeah, in part, but there's also a lot of other, it's sort of orthogonal to some of these other categories.
I love it. One of the other things is we're all volunteers. We're all interested in different things. I think, Bill, so this example, you have an interest, you have a way you want to think about it. I think it is best if you are the owner of that idea, you're the owner of what it is, and you bring forward the proposal. So I think changing it from residential EV adoption to whatever you want is exactly what you do.
And what's the thing? Transportation?
Well, transportation decarbonization, too many syllables. Mode shift is only 2 syllables, but there are 2 different ways of describing, I think, the same thing.
Okay. All
I
right.
think as long as the initiatives are tied into the goals of the CARP at a high level, then I think they can be whatever you all think that they should be. I think that when you developed this, Nick, it was based off of, and even the word initiatives was coming out of when you all were working on your
Yes.
I called them white papers because they became quite extensive, but on the different topic areas that fed into the CARP.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. That's why it's called initiatives. That is in fact completely correct. And then just the final thing, which is very, very obvious, as we build this stuff out, we have to spread it out between staff, you know, our advocacy role and our advisory role, because otherwise we're going to end up working against or stepping on toes or whatever else. And we don't need to do that. We need to be focused. Okay. So next steps, each member comes up with objectives to their focus area. I think we're going to talk about Roberto today. Kathleen's already put it together. Bill is working on his. Patty knows what she wants to do, broadly speaking, but I don't think she's got quite as far. So I think we're in a good place. So I think everyone needs to work on coming up with their plans. To the extent that I put together some stuff that is kind of like a starting plan. If you want help with putting things together in a similar way, so we have similar formats, I can help with that either by showing you how to do it in AI or by just taking your stuff and then transforming it.
I would love to do the AI thing with you just to see. I mean, I saw your endnotes, but I didn't know how to change that into.
It's great to do it over
Sorry,
coffee because
Yeah.
you do something, it's doing something, and you have a sip of coffee after.
Yeah, it's fun.
So we'll go ahead and do that.
And what you put together, it's in the attachments for this meeting.
Yeah.
Things for Berto. Put aside these for Berto. There was, for example, in there a table. Showing what different towns are doing in different categories, things like that. And you use AI to do that.
Yes.
Okay. I did a little bit of Googling on AI. All right. The table you made, and I agree with you, it takes a long time because you guys might not remember, but in February or March, I sent out tables that looked sort of like that I did in Excel that took me time to do. But in order to do that, use a table like that in AI, you need to have the agent AI, because what I got is the free AI, which, I can do some little
Yeah.
searches. I can take pictures of my grandchildren and make them look like Muppets and stuff. But don't you need the agent AI, which has a subscription fee?
You do need to pay for the agent. Yes. Nothing in life is free, unfortunately.
So
For the Muppets.
So if I mean, I think the AI stuff, I mean, there's all sorts of questions about then what do we do with what?
So we don't-
But those were good work products to get you thinking, but do we then as individuals?
No, you don't need to. I can just generate all the stuff with you. I can sit down and generate it with you, and then you can take it and run with it. That would be the ideal situation, because then you don't have to buy a license and I know what I'm doing, and we can move it forward and you can learn something. I'm happy to do that. And then if you want to go off and buy a license for your own usage, that's
Can you do that without a public meeting?
we can do it publicly. Anyone who wants to come can come and watch. I don't care.
I just want to know. Just so you don't go too far overboard when first of all, if you're dealing with scheduling issues, you don't.
Yeah, we-
Meeting, right? And if you're meeting, like two people are meeting and that's not a quorum, and you're not sort of deliberating on issues of a subcommittee or issues that you're planning on bringing back to the full board.
We don't need to do that. Yeah.
We can.
I think you're right. And then in this case, just to be clear, the thing that's deliberating is an AI bot in the cloud somewhere in probably in Poland or something like that. I don't know where, Taiwan. So we're not actually doing the deliberation anyway. So we are running out of time. Who needs to leave early?
I need.
I do.
Okay. Let's move on to, I think we've killed this. I think everyone understands what we're doing, broadly speaking. Follow up with me if you don't. Let's move on to Berto. Now, this is my fault for sending out too many documents. More documents were posted than we are planning to discuss today. So I think the Berto information, the existing towns analysis, the city comparison, the media analysis, the short bylaw, the extended bylaw, the bylaw addendum, and the messages of Berto comparative matrix. I didn't intend to discuss those today because it's premature for us to go down the path, because we're not at the point where we even know if we're doing those. Those are just more examples of what we could do. I think what we really need to look at is the Berto plan, which is which one? Well, let's start with yours, Alan.
Well, yeah, and what we did, this was mostly from Werner. Nick had sent out I think it's sort of an AI generated plan, was in great detail. Okay. And Werner took a look at it. He said, well, it's for discussion at the meeting. And he said, nobody's going to read something that's 10 pages long. If we want to have a discussion about the high points of the plan, we need something that's on one page. And this is that one page. Which we believe is, in general terms, consistent with the detailed plan. It's just a very high level. One thing I do want to say under background is 19% of the greenhouse gas emissions. In the detailed one, it says, I think 45%, which is there. 19% is the correct number.
You can't trust AI. So that's why I got to tell you.
Okay, what can I say? Anyway, this is the plan. I don't know. Did you guys look at it yet or not? If not, we could talk through it a little bit.
I think we should talk through it.
Okay. Well, the first thing was what's purpose? Okay. We see the purpose is to develop a warrant article or warrant articles to establish a Berto, we're using the term ordinance, um, but I guess in Brookline, it really would not be an ordinance, it would be a bylaw. And the purpose of this would be to eliminate greenhouse gas emissions from on-site fossil fuels by 2040, which is aligned with the warrant article from 2021 that said whatever zero emissions by 2040. Okay. Background, that's just exactly what it is. That came from the numbers that I put together several months ago. Just to give an idea of the nature of the issue. And you can see here that most of the emissions, this was taken directly from the greenhouse gas inventory that we got from Blue Strike. So this number might change slightly. But most of the emissions are from residential buildings, 25%. Greenhouse gas emissions from buildings are from residential, 19% from non-residential. Boston, Cambridge, Lexington, and Newton have enacted Berto laws. Okay, those are facts. Okay, now we'll get into the next thing, and this is well, just hold on, let's see something here. Yeah, let's just take it in the order it's written. So what we talked about first is, all right, who's going to work on this? You know, and there's two options there, which were examples. It could be a working group of 6 to 7 people, or maybe we have a really big group where we try to get all the stakeholders involved at the same time. It's a much larger number of people. Okay. This is there as a discussion point. We don't, we have opinions on individually which way to go, but it's a big group or small groups. Membership, okay, who's on it? How many people from town staff? With the people from ZEAB, other people from town committees. Who's the chair? In other words, how do you set up a committee? Would we need a paid consultant? When Newton did this, they had a paid consultant. My personal opinion is we probably don't need a paid consultant for a lot of the things, but as we get into it, we might find there are some things where we do need some outside help. Political strategy is really the key to this. And one of the things I'll say that Werner and I did talk about was that we've got, there's a lot of things here that I'll say, I'll call them not political. It's the numbers generating, what are the greenhouse gas emissions? How much is it going to cost to do it? Things like that. And the white paper that we put together was a rough first pass at that, but there's a lot of stuff that needs to be further developed. Okay, we see that being done really in parallel with the political strategy, because the early outreach, it's not going to get into the weeds on a lot of the numbers. It's going to be the big overall scope of things. So we see two paths going along two paths simultaneously. The political strategy, we put these as questions. How do we do it? I'm not going to read all of them, and there may be other things that I think we will want ZF to produce, give some advice. We scroll up to key decisions. Okay, let's go. That's.
I know. I have it here.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
I'm not in control.
Okay, all right. So timetable for so the key decisions. Okay, and we've talked about these things before. The timetable for implementation. Boston basically is they have a very aggressive timetable. They already have residential buildings involved. There is a bit of a gradation in terms of different size buildings coming in one year and the next year and so on. But there's this question, if you're gonna have it, you know, what's a timetable over which different classes and types of buildings become subject to this? Minimum size of buildings, you know, what do we do on that? I mean, right now, we've already got the Massachusetts LDER, so that's a good starting point. But how and over what time do we bring in other buildings? Because eventually, well, if we're gonna have zero emissions, eventually that means single family homes. It means everything. Outreach to building owners. It's basically, I'm not gonna read all the details. The ACPs, this is these alternative compliance payments, which is a payment that is made by a property if in a given year, a given calendar year, its greenhouse gas emissions exceed some certain limit that's been described in the bylaw. And the other question I do notice, and I don't think we have it written down, is okay, then these alternative compliance payments, what's that money used for? Okay, Cambridge, Boston, and I think Newton as well, are using that to support decarbonization for in economic justice neighborhoods or people. So, but you need to come up with a plan. What are we going to do? And then
I'm going to cut you off for a second.
Yeah.
Because Kathleen has to leave in 5 minutes, 4 minutes. So Kathleen, do you have?
I don't have to leave till 6:45.
Oh, 6:45.
I kind of leave.
You got to leave. Do you have any feedback, thoughts, concerns? Like,
Yes, a lot. That's the short answer. And not enough to handle in
4 minutes.
4 minutes. Obviously, there's two tracks to this. One is the technical track of like what we need to do, and the other is the political track. Of like how do we get this through the process. It would be helpful if when you do your research, that you also research the political facts about what they did to get to the points that they got to.
the other towns.
Yeah, the other towns, sure. That would certainly be useful. I don't know whether you could bite off all 4 phases, for example, in one warrant article, or whether you want to just do the first or maybe the first 3. So that's another. It's a political consideration. I understand, not a technical consideration. To the extent that you can separate out the allocation of funds, you know. This almost sounds like something like CPA money. And, you know, once you start sort of doing alternative compliance, did Boston or other towns have to go to the legislature to be able to extract the payments? I mean, this is considered if they didn't have to.
I don't know about Lexington, but Cambridge, Boston, Newton, no.
The other thing about could just interject.
That's surprising to me. You know, that's one would think that this is some sort of tax. Or if the legislature would consider this some sort of tax.
They go to pains to not call it a fee or a fine.
It's a term.
Do you remember fall of 2022 when we had 9 climate warrant articles? And one of it was to establish a fund. It was a home rule petition. So it was gonna go to legislature.
Yeah.
And,
it might be different for us as well in the
but-
boss.
I just want to clarify that those were your town and those were for cities, the other
yeah,
that I was talking.
right.
Like,
But I mean, you may need to do something similar.
Oh, yeah, no, we recognize it. But I'll let you finish before I say.
I think I'm gonna leave it there.
Okay. Yeah, the one,
There's more.
yeah, what I would say, I sent out a table a couple of days ago. Newton, it's very interesting. If you look at this is from the Massachusetts LDER list. I'll preface it by saying, I know there are errors in that, but that is the official list of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts as of today.
Yeah.
Right? And if you take the total square feet of buildings 20,000 square feet and larger in Newton, it's almost identical to what it is in Brooklyn. One is like 27 million square feet and the other might be 26 million square feet. Yeah, it's, you just take their thing and add up the square feet.
That doesn't surprise me.
Okay, and the other thing, which I think should not be surprised is the relative number of commercial properties versus residential. There's a lot more residential in Brookline, but you go down the street, you see a lot of apartment buildings in Brookline. But it strikes me that, and we've had conversations with the people at Newton, they're very eager to talk to us about this. And I personally think talking on a more official basis with the people from Newton to get some of their details would be very useful, because I think the work involved for town staff, for monitoring information, so on and so forth, is going to be the same order of magnitude.
Great.
I just want to, because you can't see, I just want you to know you do have several members of the public here and there's some hands raised. So just for whenever you want to take those.
That is good. I'm going to go with Kathleen first.
So going back to those fall of 2022 warrant articles, there were some definite lessons learned from CF, and I just need you to listen to those lessons, because you learn a lot about not having full select board behind you,
Yeah.
not having very influential people behind you or fully on board, even if they weren't fighting it, they were still able to send a message of maybe uncertainty, and the public got some very effective speakers to speak against some of them. And they just, it's like when things started spiraling, then we didn't have any, it's not like the select board was all aligned and supporting us. This was Dia putting the warrant articles forward, not the select board. So it was not theirs to defend. And it really felt like we were kind of hanging out on limb.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Good to know. Bill, do you have anything?
Sure. I think you allude to it in, above where you talk about identification of obstacles and solutions, et cetera. I think, to me, it'd be interesting to know what the other cities did and to be thinking about how to, at the same time as presenting Berto, how to also say, and here are the solutions that will help you address this. So not have it be just the sort of burden of Berto, but at the same time, here are the ways in which the incentives. But really,
I'm not trying to say, in other words, what are ways that other towns have addressed those?
Yeah,
Is that what you're saying?
I mean, this is, you could read this as being kind of harsh, kind of punitive, like,
Yeah.
if you don't do this, bad things will happen to you.
Uh-huh.
Well, if that's the only way we're coming across, then it gets back to the tact and the politics around this, and just have it be the acceptability of it. So if at the same time we can say, and by the way, here are how we can work with you on solutions to help this be much more beneficial.
Okay.
For all of us.
Okay, if I just.
Yeah, okay, because I'm gonna add something to what you just said too.
I want to finish that, and then I'll.
Okay, so related to what I just said about the lessons learned, the select board made it very clear that they wanted CF to focus on carrots and not sticks. And so any kind of like tax or something, like there was a real loss of confidence in ZF at that time, because it was kind of a surprise to a lot of people and we didn't do the outreach that was probably needed for something like that. And that was a really harsh criticism we received from everybody.
Yeah,
So that's very important.
we talked about carrots and sticks. You have to have both, like multiple times. That's very clearly the case. I did get some feedback from some developers. This does not apply to all residents in town, but I got feedback from some developers, and they said, broadly speaking, that the development community probably won't change things without having a stick. So, and that was from developers themselves. Now, there may also need to be a carrot, but that was a sort of commentary. We also know that, based upon how quickly the greenhouse gas emissions are going down, and noting of obviously the early adopters are people who are inclined to do this work, that we will not hit our goals at present. So we're not on track. So that's the question. Let's take some questions, some comments from the public. Who do we have? I can't see who we have here.
Yeah, so, we have, 5 members of the public with us right now, and we have, a few hand raised, so I think.
Why don't you pick?
Linda had her hand up first,
Linda.
so, Linda, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and take it away.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Alan. I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm Linda Olson-Pelkey. I am a town meeting member in precinct 17. I am a member of the advisory committee on the land use, zoning, and sustainability subcommittee, and I am the vice chair of the comprehensive plan steering committee. And I am also a trustee at a 50-unit 1940 multifamily condo building. And I've been trying to find out what you guys have been up to around this question, and I'm never able to make the time of your meetings, but I made a special effort today to get here now. So I guess the first thing, just as a general question I have, is how does this thinking around this building energy reduction ordinance fit in with the CARP and just that whole process in like, and I'm hearing that you're considering this your main strategy, sounds like, for dealing with the issues of energy use in buildings. So that's my first question. Just how does, in your thinking, how does this fit in to what you're envisioning for the CARP and all of that?
So I think I can take this. Alexandra, correct me if I'm wrong. So Birdo would be part of the CARP. The question is, what exactly is our Birdo? What does it look like? And I think that's part of the discussion. Now, I don't think we have a full and clear picture of what we want it to be. A challenge we have is that we are tasked, ZIAB is tasked with advising the town on how to get to net zero by 2040. To get to net 2040, we have to get rid of the 43% of emissions from buildings. And there are 2 ways that's going to happen. Either A, people are going to voluntarily go off and do this, or B, there's going to be some mechanism to encourage them to do it. In this case, it'll be a stake, Birdo. And what Boston and other towns and other municipalities have decided is there needs to be a stick as well as the various carrots that are available.
Yeah. Okay. You know that we have a problem with affordability already, and we're in a economic crisis, I would say, and it's only going to get worse. So anyway, my point here is going to be that in relation to your discussion about politics and how to get this passed, I would say the first thing you need to focus on is this feasible? Is this feasible for the people living in Brookline? And personally, having called numerous contractors out to our building to have various discussions about, what we can do for air conditioning, what we could, could we put heat pumps on our roof? Could it possibly work in this building? It is all proven to be extremely, basically impossible and extremely, extremely expensive. So I think that your task, rather than finding zealots who will support anything that reduces greenhouse gases no matter what, I think you're going to need to understand what this is going to really mean for people and be able to show them that you have a good handle on that and that it is actually feasible. Because just this, we are all suffering incredible amounts of inflation right now. Anybody who's managing a building, everything now costs twice as much. The insurance, just because of what's happened, and the climate change impact. So we're dealing with that I would just rather spend any extra penny that we have on actually implementing a strategy rather than paying a fine or a fee And if you're thinking about it in terms of a fund to help people, well, how are you going to determine how it gets distributed? Because the truth is, when you have mixed buildings, you're going to have families and households of very different means, and it's going to hit some people really, really severely, and other people are going to be able to afford it. So I think you have to really think about all of those things. And if you're hell-bent on doing this and making it punitive and doing it no matter what, and thinking that it's going to be lucrative to go after the big buildings, and thinking of people sitting there on a pile of money, well, none of that is real. So I just think you, at a minimum, you're going to need better representation on your group. And you need to do the hard work to be able to speak knowledgeably about what this is really going to mean for people. And that's what was wrong about the past efforts. There was no real follow through, no real thought process, no real analysis of what it might mean to people in this town. So that would be my plea to you. And think instead, I agree with the comment about the carrots versus sticks. In this environment that we're living in now, more sticks that cost money is just a bad idea. I'm sorry. It is just a bad idea. You need to find ways to help people do what you want them to do, not punish them. And that's not a very technical thing that I'm giving you. And my other friends that are here hopefully will speak up, because they're much more into the weeds on the technical questions. But I have looked at reports about Boston, and I've seen that they have estimated that 80% of the financial burden of this bylaw, ordinance, whatever it is we're going to call it, falls to condominiums. And we have thousands and thousands and thousands of them. And they're all very different. So that's my feedback to you today. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Just so you know, there are some documents that we could share them with you if you're interested that look at the overall cost of this. So we've done quite a bit of work looking at what the cost would be. And a large part of our conversation prior to this meeting about Berta has been the fact that condominiums, focusing on condominiums is actually not equitable, because single family homes, the implementation in Boston and in Cambridge and in Newton that focuses on condominiums and on large buildings excludes single family homes who might actually be in a better position to financially afford. It's not an equitable approach. So we are very aware of those things, and that is part of our consideration.
And I would say the other piece is the feasibility of the conversion, period. I mean, honestly, we have gotten many people out here to consult on this topic, and there's no good alternatives for us. And we're actually using more energy because we have denser units. We have more people living in our building than we used to, because people are crowding in, and that means we use more water, more electricity, more everything. And so our usage, no matter what we are trying to do here, has been going up. And I don't think it would be fair either to be punished for that. So.
Thank you for your comment. I think we're going to move on to some other comments. We've got John.
To John, so.
John Bowman.
Yes, thank you. John Bowman, town meeting member, precinct 10. I'm also on the board of Climate Action Brookline. I have an observation and a question related to the objective from the document that you reviewed. So if you could show the top of that page, I would appreciate it.
We'll do that. Give us 1 sec.
The purpose is to develop a warrant article. It seems to me to be implicit in that you would advocate for the passage of that warrant article. And my question for you is that what you intend in this purpose? If so, it should be made explicit. And well, that's basically what I have to ask and suggest.
So are you posing that as a question?
Yeah, my question to Ziab is, where are you in your thought process about advocating for Berto in Brookline? And my interpretation of the purpose is that you've already implicitly cast your lot with trying to pass a Berto. And I don't know whether that's true or not.
I think we don't know what our Berto would look like. It is very difficult to say, or what political support there would be for it, or whether it would be practical to pass it. Until we have done the work to determine what it's going to look, what we think it might look like, until we've had conversations with select board members, town meeting members, it's very hard to say what we think that the Berto will look like. So it's very hard to say whether we will, what we're going to do about it. What we can say is that if we are tasked with getting rid of fossil fuels by 2040, and if we do not have a Berto-like ordinance of bylaw, it seems very unlikely that we will get to net zero by 2040.
It'll work anyway.
Maybe I might have understood John's point to just, instead of to establish a Berto, to approve a Berto. Like, we're taking a position. It's not just, the goal is not to float a warrant article and then step back. We want to see it actually.
Right, that's not the idea. Okay, the idea is we believe it for this, if this is gonna happen, it will happen through the process of a warrant article. But develop a warrant article doesn't mean that ZF will develop a warrant article, or it doesn't mean that ZF won't be involved. Maybe it should be in the passive voice, a warrant article will be developed or something like that. But this is, at this point, this doesn't mean that, we have warrant articles written and we can go to people and say, let's vote for this.
It's just that I heard John, and maybe John needs to speak for himself, but I heard him say, there's more to the goal than this, right? Because we want to see it approved. That's the.
We believe that something like this
There's
needs to be approved.
Yeah, a Berto. There's some Berto out there.
Here's 3 more hands up.
Okay,
Well,
who
if
else?
that's the case, then I think you should make it explicit in documenting and communicating the purpose.
Yeah,
Okay, I agree with it. That sounds good.
Thank you.
Next, John, since we had another John.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm John Hebert, town meeting member in precinct 7. And what I primarily want to do here is really echo just about everything that Linda said, except that I want to come at it from the standpoint and amplify it, and coming at it from the standpoint of the owner of a single family 1888 Victorian house. And I, like Linda, have attempted, I would love to have an air source heat pump to be able to supplement my heating system, my central forced hot water heating system that uses cast iron radiators and a boiler in the basement to drive those radiators. And I would love to be able to have more central air conditioning than the window unit that we use in the summer to try to cool the whole house, and actually do so reasonably successfully. So the problem is twofold. We have had, like Linda, we've had a contractor come in and actually give us an estimate for installing a single heat pump and three heads to be able to provide that heat and the cooling in the summer. And the cost of the heat pump, this was a couple of years ago, or maybe even 3 years ago at this point, the cost of the heat pump was something like $20,000, and the cost of each one of the heads to be able to deliver the heating and cooling was going to be another $5,000 each. So we're looking at $35,000 to be able to merely supplement our heat and to basically more efficiently cool about half the house using a heat pump. Despite the fact of the cost, we had Mass Save come in, and we had actually arranged for them to, or a contractor to come in, blow in insulation in the walls of our house. It turns out that our house is back plastered, so it was impossible. They drilled 5 holes in the first floor of our house from the outside and were unable to get any insulation in the walls. Now, we've had air sealing in the basement. We've had air sealing in the attic space. We've had additional insulation put in the toe walls for the up on the 3rd floor of the house. And we've done pretty much all we can to be able to insulate this house. So for the one thing I want to amplify as a result of this is the whole issue of feasibility. My house is not hardly alone in this town. There are a lot of houses in this town that are roughly the same vintage and probably have the same problems of trying to more adequately insulate. And the expense, frankly, is almost secondary. I'd welcome it. But looking at the expense, the crossover between installing an air source heat pump for supplemental heating, let alone full heating, it'd probably be 2 or 3 times that to be able to heat it adequately. Compared to what I have now, it is going to be 2 lifetimes away for me. And I would suggest it may be the same for many people. So I think you really need to think very carefully about what the goal is here, and maybe back off from 100% and go after a more realistic goal.
Thank you. John, I have actually a comment for the town meeting members, which I think not really for discussion now, but something maybe worth thinking about. We've had three town meeting members come and talk to us and raise this concern, and we may have some more concerns here. The town passed a warrant article in 2021 saying that the town would get to net zero by 2040. The purpose of ZIA is to give advice about how we should do that. Now, what I'm hearing from Linda and from John is that you think this is not feasible. If that's the case, maybe Linda or John, you should come forward with a town article that modifies or presents to town meeting a goal which is different than the goal that we have been tasked with. Because what I'm hearing right now is that you're telling us that the task we have been tasked with is not feasible. Yet we are required to try and give advice to the town about how to achieve the task that the town meeting voted for. So we're in a bind. If you think it's unfeasible and you think that we should have a different goal, you should bring that forward. That would be my comment on and that's just because we've been given a task. We're trying to meet the task. And by the way, John, I live in an 1884 house. I'm very familiar with your problems, right? I just recently had to abandon putting solar panels on my roof because of various issues, right? So I'm completely familiar with the challenges. But anyway, I just want to make that comment, and I want to move on to David. Is it David? You're not unmuted.
You're muted.
Okay, sorry. Dave Dorr, Stedman Street. I'm a voter, I guess. I've also been a trustee of a nonprofit, that had a $12 million endowment for about 5 years. So I'm just coming new to this because I was reading the listserv and some of the issues coming up here. But I'm a statistician, and I guess that's a second career. I started as a mathematician. But and I'm sort of putting my trustee hat on. When one embarks on a project, I want to get the best bang for the buck. So the goal here is to reduce carbon emissions. So 100% has been pointed out, may be a little bit too optimistic. But I would like to see a little bit more research on where money can be most effectively spent to get the largest carbon emission reduction. So I don't know if I don't know in the Boston or Cambridge or Newton, I don't know what kind of quantitative analyses going to the, return on carbon criteria. So, but that's all I'd have to say. It would be useful to have more data on what strategies are most effective from a dollar point of view in terms of the ultimate goal of reducing carbon. So if anybody has any references, send them along.
I think we are working on something to that in that regard, which is to say that there are 43% of emissions come from buildings. To get to net zero, we have two choices. We can either reduce the greenhouse gas emissions from those buildings to zero, or we can offset. Offset means doing things like net new solar or planting trees or whatever else. Offsets are also very expensive. So every path to net zero for the buildings in Brookline is expensive. We haven't finished our analysis on what those offsets might look like, but we are doing some analysis on that. And that will be shared with the public.
Just to make one little follow-up comment. I haven't seen the numbers, so I don't know if targeting buildings is the most efficient use of an investment in terms of reducing carbon. Depends on the age of those buildings, what type of construction they are. As John was saying, his money is probably not going to be well spent on doing a single family early 1900 Victorian due to the difficulties. It would just be too expensive and it wouldn't reduce the carbon that much. So I would like to look at the objective function, reducing carbon, and the expense is the dollar amount you have to put into renovations. So I would like to see an analysis along those lines. So I don't know if somebody has looked into what the return on carbon is for working on a 1940s condo building.
We've done some analysis on the costs and it's actually been part of our earlier discussions, and you can find it in past meeting notes. So there's a document that looks at the costs. But just to know, if the town has emissions from buildings and cars, which make up most of the emissions for the town, collectively about 70-something% of the emissions for the town, net zero means that all of those emissions go away, either absolutely or by offset. It doesn't mean that, so there's no opportunity, if you're talking about net zero, of saying we don't get rid of the carbon emissions for buildings. That's not an option, right? And that's what that town meeting voted for. And maybe town meeting didn't understand what they were voting for, but that is what they voted for. So I'm going to move on to Karen.
Thank you. I have to duck out because I've got another Zoom.
Okay, thank you, David.
Hi there. I'm Karen Kraut. I am a resident, Precinct 5, and a member of Brookline Mothers Out Front, and also statewide Mothers Out Front, and a coalition called Gas Transition Allies. A couple things. One is, I think it's important that we all recognize that maintaining a massive gas system and a massive utility system, which are basically two duplicate systems, are going to be, it's very burdensome for ratepayers over time. The gas system is extremely expensive to maintain. It's being pipes are being replaced at the cost of $40 billion over a 30-year period. That's all going to be paid for ratepayers, and the price of gas is only going to go up. So I just want to put the context that we're not thinking about going towards clean energy compared to nothing and no cost. We're comparing it to the cost of maintaining a massive gas system and gas infrastructure and the increasing price of gas and replacing all your own appliances of that are gas over time. So it's just important that we're comparing it to an actual other cost, not to no cost. Secondly, I just want to say specific to Berto and your exploration as a committee, because we do have 3 cities that are, have passed Birdo, I think it might be worth, if you haven't already, just talking to the people who crafted the policy and ask them, how's it going? Is there anything that they would do differently? Have they learned anything from having Birdo for the period of time that they've had it? Just to see if there's anything we can improve upon from, obviously we're going to tailor it to Brookline, but is there anything that we can improve upon from their actual experience? So those are my comments.
Thank you, Karen. We are almost out of time. I'm going to go with Linda. You have your hand up again?
Yes, I did. Let me try to remember what it was. Just burning thing I had to say. Why don't you go on to John while I try to remember what
Okay,
my point
John.
was?
Thanks. I have just a, once again, John Hebert, town meeting member, precinct 7. I just have a quick question about what your timeline is to make these proposals that you're suggesting in your plan before town meeting. And I ask that just to let you know that I think it's a very interesting idea to file a warrant article that would modify warrant article 37 from, what was it, 2019 or 2021 perhaps.
So it's a great question, and I don't have a good answer. But I'll give you the best answer I can give you. We don't yet know whether this is going to be something that is driven by town staff or by working group from Seattle. We don't yet know exactly what the plan is going to be. Ideally, we would want to do this in Springtown meeting, but that would probably be a very aggressive plan. That's the best answer I can give you. And also, we've got to talk to a whole bunch of people, work out where there's support, if there's support. There's a lot to be done, as I think you know.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I remembered what my point was. Linda Olson-Pelkey again. Yeah, what I'm remembering about when we passed warrant article 37 is that it's a resolution. And what everyone loves to say in Brookline is resolutions are not binding. Now, you may have adopted it for your plan, and you may be working from that as a base point, but I think it is incumbent upon this committee to examine that for its feasibility. I think if you really had some solid thinking behind it and you perhaps agreed with some of the issues that we've raised, that feasibility is going to be an issue, financing is going to be an issue, low income people will be displaced, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, then maybe you could recommend what you think is actually feasible. Because when people in town meeting vote on resolutions, they don't understand the implication at all in any way. They hear, I like that Brookline is going to do something about the climate, and I'm in favor of doing something about the climate, and I will vote for this. That is how it happened. That is what happened. There was no thought or information given as to how this was actually going to be achieved by anyone who proposed it. I think it was first 2050, and then at the last minute, someone's, no, it has to be sooner. It should be 2040. And then the rush to vote for that happened. And honestly, that is the level of thought that went into it. So, take it with a grain of salt, I would say. We need people who can give factual analysis for decision making. That's what we need.
So I appreciate that. If you like, you can, if you reach out, we can send you the documents we put together. They are quite long on Birdo, and they do look at costs. I'll also note that there is already a framework in place that looks at the cost per ton of greenhouse gas emissions for all our initiatives. That's the basis of the CARP, is we have a framework that looks at that kind of stuff. So we are looking at these things. But I appreciate your input, and Alan, you have something to say.
Yeah, two things. Linda, two things. Number one, I was going to say before, you and I ought to get together, and I'll give you a copy of the basic document that has a lot of the background. We can talk about it. And I'd also at that time like to, like we did years ago, talk a little bit more about your condo and what you found out. The other thing, you're probably aware of this, maybe you're not. I know your building, is bigger than 20,000 square feet. I mean, I've been there.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So your building is subject to the Massachusetts Large Building Energy Reporting, and which means energy uses, electricity, natural gas, fuel oil, things like that, have they've already been reported to the state and will be published by the state later this year. So I don't know if you're aware of this LBER law, but you and I can talk about that as well. If you still have my email, could you send me an email? Because I don't have your email address anymore, and we'll get together.
Okay, is yours still the same?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
I think we're over time. Do we have anything else on the agenda?
We do, staff update, but, I figured, that we were gonna get to it. And you also, have lost your forum, so
So we have to end it.
I think.
Thank you, John and Linda, for your comments.
Can you, I don't really know, but can you still do a motion to adjourn?
I will do a motion to adjourn.
Can someone second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Because if we can't adjourn, we have to all stay.